Hello, Buckeye fans. Welcome to another episode of the Bucknuts Happy Hour. Not one I was initially planning on doing today. In fact, I was going to do it on Thursday, but we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon because we've got some big Buckeye news. Ohio State has, we think, completed its coaching staff for 2025 with the hiring of longtime NFL defensive coordinator, head coach, even briefly offensive coordinator, Matt Patricia. There were some other staff moves as well, with Tim Walton being promoted to co-defensive coordinator along with Matt Patricia, and then Matt Guerrieri moving to pass game coordinator, I think was the title. This has been quite the ordeal, all these staff hirings. It's been a lot to keep up with, so I'm going to enjoy a beverage here as we sit. Got to cover a basketball game tonight still, so nothing too crazy. But to help break this down, we're bringing in Dave Biddle. Dave, how we doing, my friend?
I'm doing really well. I almost forgot there was a hoops game tonight. They got to win this one tonight, man.
They do.
Bit of a swing game on Sunday leading into Super Bowl Sunday. It's too bad they couldn't pull that game out at Nebraska, but they need to win this one tonight.
Yes, we actually, when I tweeted out that we were doing this, Ryan Thomas on Twitter, the one response was, "Is Devin Royal ready to go tonight?" I was like, "Well, we're talking football here," but we did talk a little basketball.
Walk and chew gum, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, Dave. Let's first get into the main crux of this, and that's Matt Patricia, right? We'll talk about some of the other things with Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri, and maybe we're not even done yet. I'll get to that in a little bit, but Matt Patricia, you and I have talked about this a little bit already. I think you are probably more on the pro side. I am a little more skeptical by this hire, and I think that is fairly reflective of Ohio State's fan base right now, because it seems to be a pretty derisive topic. Give me your just initial thoughts, and then I'll give mine, and we'll get into kind of the nitty-gritty of this hiring.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think the fan base, even the beat, the little I've seen, not that I have checked in with all of our friends on the beat, it seems even the beat's a little bit split on this. Here's where I come down. I mean, the biggest thing is now I'm in full, and if I'm proven wrong, I'm proven wrong. I'm in full, I trust Ryan Day 100% mode. I really do. And it's not just because of the national championship, although that's a lot of it. He has done a really good job hiring offensive and defensive coordinators. I said on Twitter, I said that he's done a great job hiring coordinators except for Kerry Combs. And somebody said, well, Parker Fleming. And I'm like, okay, I wasn't talking about special teams coordinators. Yeah, man, I mean, I trust Ryan Day, number one. Number two, I know some of the advanced metrics are not as kind to Matt Patricia when he was with the Patriots, but still being the defensive coordinator, when you win 3 Super Bowls, I fully know Bill Belichick, as a defensive guy, and he was the head coach. I get it. But Matt Patricia's not coming here as head coach. It reminds me a little bit, not as much, because Chip Kelly had more respect when he came here. But there were people that were skeptical of Chip Kelly coming here as offensive coordinator. But they were talking about things like, oh, well, the wheels fell off with the Niners when he was head coach of an NFL team. So I do look at more of what Patricia's done as a defensive coordinator than what he did with the Lions as head coach. I know right now Dan Campbell's doing a good job, so you can't just say, well, no one would win with the Lions. Well, okay. Yeah, you can win with the Lions. He did a bad job with the Lions as head coach. But here's the list. I'll give you a small list of coaches that have not done well as NFL head coaches. Nick Saban, just the GOAT, Steve Spurrier, pretty good. Urban Meyer, other than Saban himself, the best coach of his generation. So I don't put a lot of stock in what happened in Detroit. And I like the hire overall, and Ryan Day undoubtedly vetted this extremely well, Patrick, in my opinion. So I'm on board with it for the reasons I mentioned. Now I'm curious to hear why you're skeptical.
Well, first of all, I think you make good points. I think the Chip Kelly example is probably the closest thing we've got, because, yes, those of us inside the Ohio State beat, Ohio State fandom, Ohio Buckeye Nation, so to speak, I think we all understood, okay, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly have this long-standing relationship. Apparently, everyone didn't know that, I guess, based on how many times they talked about it on various platforms throughout this past season. I guess maybe that's just my ignorance of the outside world. But to me, I think that is a good example of the reaction, because there were a lot of people outside of the Ohio State sphere that were like, what is he doing here? This is a guy who's lost his touch. I think with Matt Patricia, I am just unsure of what he is as a coach because of what you mentioned with Bill Belichick. And we've got a small sample size outside of that, right? With him as the head coach of the Detroit Lions, which, again, to your point, Dave, I don't take that too much. I did look a little bit at their defense, but it was not the greatest personnel. There was no Aiden Hutchinson and some of the guys that are on this current Detroit Lions defense on that group. And then there's obviously the Philadelphia Eagles situation where he was an advisor, I think, for most of the year, then took over calling the defense at the end. So for me, I guess I just don't know how well Matt Patricia is as a guy who has to run a defense, which is what he's going to have to do here because the head ball coach in this situation is not a defensive guy, right?
Speaking of Spurrier, I love the head ball coach reference. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but either way, we're going to pretend like it was.
Yeah, sure. We'll say it was. But I think it's at least a risk that you're taking here, right? Now, at least from our perspective, we will hear from Ryan Day hopefully soon about all of this and all of the hires. I think if you look at the success that the Patriots have exclusively, like home run, right? But then, I want to hear when we get to talk to Matt Patricia, what is the defensive coordinator for the Patriots when you are working under Bill Belichick? How much are you doing? How much did you have to do? Who's calling the plays? All that. And I think that would give us a better sense. And then the other thing is his work with others, so to speak, because, and I've never met the guy. I don't think you've ever met the guy, but there's a lot of talk out there about how he deals with players, deals with other people on the staff. I don't know if this is true. I've just heard it, read it, those type of things. And obviously coming to college for really the first time, he was a college coach very early on in his career. But those relationships are important, right? He's at some level going to have to recruit, even if it's a minimal level. So how can you adjust to be more personable, connect with people, those type of things? Obviously Jim Knowles wasn't the fuzziest of guys, but he did seem to have a bit more of a personality. I think it's similar to, we've seen Bill Belichick out on the recruiting trail right now, right? And how is that going other than just flashing the rings? And I think that's what we'll have to figure out here with Matt Patricia. As you look at Matt Patricia's defenses or the Patriots defenses, what do you see that you like that may translate to Ohio State? Because I know he's done some multiple fronts. I know more often than not, he's been in an odd front. Ohio State obviously hasn't done a ton of that, but we started to see a little bit more of that at the end of last season. As far as we know, Larry Johnson will be back, and that I've hinted a couple times. I think there could potentially still be something. I think Larry Johnson is something to keep an eye on because we haven't gotten any sort of official word, and there's been talks of a meeting between him and Ryan Day a few weeks back. So just what do you make of kind of what this defense might look like?
Yeah, you hit it. I mean, he is mostly a 3-4 guy, but he also mixes it up. And he's not coming here to do whatever the hell he wants to do. He's coming here to do what Ryan Day wants him to do. And it's not lost on me that Ryan Day is a huge New England Patriots fan.
Good point.
I mean, and because of that, I'm sure he's got a good relationship with Bill Belichick, and Urban has a good relationship with Bill Belichick. You and I both covered the 2019 pro day at Ohio State. Even though I didn't talk to Matt Patricia was there, not just being there, hanging out as the Detroit Lions head coach, checking things out. He was helping Ryan Day out. Well, not helping Ryan Day out. He was helping the program out, however you want to look at it. He was putting people through defensive drills. Matt Patricia was at Ohio State in 2019. So I have no doubt him and Ryan Day, at the very least, have a good relationship. Hopefully now it's a great relationship. But I wonder how much that plays into it. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things to unpack here. I do want to touch on recruiting real quick, even though that wasn't your question. I've heard people talk about this. Well, what about Patricia as a recruiter? And he doesn't have a good personality and this and that. First of all, people can grow and learn and become like better people. That's one thing. And I know you're kind of who you are. I get that too. I get both things. But I will say this. Here's the full list of recruits that Jim Knowles landed that were really, really awesome. End of story. Who cares? He was brought here to run the defense. Who's the recruiters on this staff, in addition to Mark Pantoni and his fantastic staff behind the scenes? Tim Walton, Matt Guerrieri, James Laurinaitis, and Larry Johnson. Wake me up when I am like concerned about defensive recruiting with those 4 guys. Okay. He's not being brought here to be like going out on the road and being an all-star recruiter. He's coming here to be that tactician. Whatever he learned from Belichick, the mistakes he made, when he was with the Patriots, maybe they could have been better certain years. Certainly they could have been better. You look at the advanced metrics, they could have been better. Like the scoring defense, the total defense looks good. The advanced metrics, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Detroit Lions, I'm sure he learned a lot of things there that he'd like to do over again. That's such invaluable experience, man. Having 3 years, got fired toward the end of the 3rd year, but having pretty much 3 years as an NFL head coach, in addition to being a defensive coordinator under Bill Belichick and winning Super Bowls. I mean, we're not talking about something, hey, maybe this guy here we're getting from like D2 school, is going to be okay. This guy's got a resume. So I'm not worried about the recruiting aspect of it. I completely trust Ryan Day. We know the stories, better than anybody. We heard from Jim Knowles, like how often like he used to joke about, I think Ryan Day interviewed me like 100 times. It was like all over Zoom because that was kind of the time we were in then. But Ryan Day does his homework. Now, did he already have guys he could ask like Bill Belichick? Yes, he did. But I trust Ryan Day here, man. And I think if he thought that this was not a culture fit, he wouldn't have done this. And by the way, a guy like Tim Walton has a lot of sway. You're not going to come in here and just do whatever the hell you want. Even though Tim Walton's co-defensive coordinator, he's got a lot of pull. So Matt Patricia knows he has to be a team player, not just because the head coach, Ryan Day, other guys on the defensive staff. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I think Matt Patricia is going to play well with others, which has been something that maybe he's accused of not doing very well.
I'm going to come back to both the Tim Walton stuff and some of the other things, but I want to stick with the recruiting stuff there because I've already seen this thrown out there, and I think it makes a lot of sense given Matt Patricia is an NFL guy. Does this seem to you to be like a 1 year, for lack of a better term, reclamation project for his career, given kind of how things went in Philadelphia, a year off? Now, we saw it with Nick Saban a lot, right? Maybe not 1 year, but guys go do this, coach, whether it be college or NFL shortly thereafter, and kind of refined their mojo, so to speak. Do you think that that's what this is shaping up to be? And if so, how do you then sell that on the recruiting trail if you're Tim Walton, all those guys you mentioned, where recruits are probably like, hey, I want to know where, who's going to be my defensive coordinator, what we're going to be running, those type of things.
Yeah, I don't know how much Matt Guerrieri can say or Tim Walton, but I'd say, listen, even if he is one and done, like we're going to be here, we're going to be heavily involved. And if you're Matt Guerrieri, you can maybe say it off the record. You might say, if he's one and done, guess who the next defensive coordinator is? It's me. Because I fully believe that. If he is one and done, Matt Patricia here in Columbus, I do think they'll then just promote Guerrieri to full-time defensive coordinator, with OG Walt also having the co-defensive coordinator title and as much money as he needs to keep him happy. You're not going to do that without making sure Tim Walton's okay with it. But, I just think he could be here 1 year, and you're right. I mean, the Saban comparison is very appropriate because, look at even Sark, obviously Lane Kiffin, all these guys that he brought in as reclamation projects. Like Sark's probably the best example. People kind of forget, like his reputation was kind of in the gutter at the time, and look at him now. So, look at Chip Kelly. That was 1 year, one and done. Is anybody disappointed with that? No. Certainly Chip Kelly's not. He tripled his salary. Ohio State's not. They won a national championship. So this could be one and done. It could be no. I don't think it's going to be any more than 2 years. And the list of coaches that have taken years off, I heard people talk about, well, you didn't coach last year, so nobody wanted him. How many coaches have taken years off? Like Greg Schiano took how many years off? Like he was an advisor at Ohio. He took a year off, and he was an advisor at Ohio State. Like a lot of coaches who have tons of money. And if you've been an NFL head coach, You have tons of money. We'll take a year off if they're not happy, So I don't put a lot of stock into 2024 with Patricia because this just means he didn't get like a job that he wanted. Okay, he wasn't searching for something that he was just going to cling to. And real quick on 2023, as you mentioned, Patrick, he was hired as an advisor for the Eagles. Then, in my opinion, we can go back and look at this. Anybody can go look at it. Late in the season, after it looked like the Eagles had quit on the season, because they knew they weren't going anywhere. Then all of a sudden he's promoted to defensive coordinator, not even in title, but as far as like you're going to call the defense now. When the team had already quit, they knew they weren't going to. It was like 4 games, so I put no validity in 2023. So I come back to what I said initially, like until proven otherwise, I am now on full Ryan Day. I trust Ryan Day 100% mode.
I think the Greg Schiano example you brought up there is interesting because he wasn't, similar to Matt Patricia, and now he'd been a head coach and had a little bit more success, but not the warm and fuzzy guy, right? Greg Schiano, at least that's not the reputation when he got to Ohio State, and that worked out pretty well. So I thought that was an interesting comparison there. As you were saying,
Vrabel took a year. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Vrabel took a year off.
Yeah.
You can go on. I mean, there's a long list. Somebody's saying, "Oh yeah, good coaches don't do that." Yeah, they do. I could go on and on and on. I could write a whole long form story on good coaches, not just coaches, good football coaches who have on their own because they wanted to and they're filthy rich, take a year off and then get back into coaching. It happens all the time.
As you were saying that, I saw this tweet from Bobby Carpenter that I guess came out about an hour ago, but he said, for those Buckeye fans who don't like this hire, he's quoting the Pete Thamel report for whatever reason, played for Matty P in New England. He's as smart and measured as you'll find. Great communicator and incredibly creative. It didn't work in Detroit as a head coach. Happens to a lot of coordinators, but he's not hired as the head coach, so don't worry about that. So Bobby Carpenter seems to be on board, saying similar things to what you're saying. As we look at, we talked a little bit schematically of what it would look like. Personnel-wise, this defense is going to be different, right? We knew that. They lost 8 starters from one of the better defenses in Ohio State history. We're going to have to rebuild that defense anyway. It probably wasn't going to be, at least to start the season, at the same level as the Buckeyes a year ago, which brought back a veteran unit. But personnel-wise, do you see fits here? Obviously, any coordinator would love to work with Caleb Downs, probably Sonny Styles as well. You obviously have a whole new starting group on the defensive line to work with. Do you see this fitting schematically with the personnel that is going to be, or we think will be in place for the Buckeyes come next fall?
I do. And if you're Matt Patricia, you got to think, oh gosh, I'm replacing 8 starters, but still you're used to coaching in the NFL where the margin is so thin. You're talking even from team 32 to team 1, anything can happen in the NFL. Not the same as college football. So even though he's only inheriting 3 returning starters, he's inheriting a heck of a talented defense. And I'll go through it. It's funny that you're bringing this up because the entire Bucknuts Morning 5 was like going through the 8 new starters on defense this year. And I think Matt Patricia is going to be thrilled with what he's working with. He's going to have, not to quote another former Belichick assistant who did not do well as a head coach, Charlie Weiss, but he's going to have a decided schematic advantage because of the talent that he has. So maybe not schematic advantage. He's going to just have an advantage because of all this talent. But yeah, one thing I'm curious about schematically is how's he going to use a guy like CJ Hicks? Like is he going to be a guy that's going to be a stand-up if they do a 3-4? Like, is he going to be a stand-up outside linebacker, really a defensive end? Like, how are they going to do that? Arvell Reese is a guy that I think is going to have an absolute huge year, but is he going to play kind of the same role as Cody Simon, or is it going to be kind of different? How are they going to deploy Sonny Styles? I'm not sure about all these questions. I'm curious to hear what Matt Patricia says about them, though. And he'll probably give us the, I need to, we haven't coached a day of spring football yet, he's going to say. But, still, there's ways to, kind of pick his brain. But I think it's going to be, again, it's going to be what Ryan Day wants with a heavy Matt Patricia flavor, but also with a heavy Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri flavor. I don't think this is going to be that much different than what we've seen, but there will be some tweaks because you're coming off a national championship. You have everybody except for Knowles coming back on the defensive staff. Are you really trying to mix things up too much? Can't imagine that's the case. I imagine Ryan Day said, that was one of his main things, finding the best guy, but also not trying to change too many things up, man. I mean, you win the national championship, ain't broke, don't fix it. So, but I tell you what, Matt Patricia is going to love working with Caleb Downs and all these guys. Even some of these first year, I mentioned Arvell Reese. Okay, you're replacing all of your defensive line, starting defensive line, and I don't love the depth at D tackle especially, but my gosh, could it be any better when you're replacing like a stud D line that just played out of their minds, leading you to the national championship? When you got Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson as your starting defensive ends, and you've got Caden McDonald and Edric Houston as your starting defensive tackles. So he's going to be very, very happy with what he's inheriting. And then in the defensive backfield, we talk about Caleb Downs. Replacing Lathan Ransom will be interesting. Will it be Jalen McClain or Malik Hartford? That's going to be a really good battle. There's no doubt Jermaine Matthews is going to be a starter at corner. Replacing Denzel Burke, they basically split time during the playoffs, as we know anyway, really for most of the season. So Jermaine Matthews is going to step right in there as a starting corner opposite IGB. Who's going to be the slot, replacing Jordan Hancock, who had a hell of a year? I think it's going to be Lorenzo Styles Jr., but I wouldn't rule out Aaron Scott. I wouldn't rule out Devin Sanchez. And regardless, Scott and Sanchez are going to play a lot. Bryce West is another guy that's going to play a lot in the secondary. Man, it's going to be fun. I just, coming off a national championship, it's house money, baby.
Yeah, I think that nickel spot, not to dovetail too far into what you and Bax talked about today, that nickel spot's going to be interesting, assuming Ohio State stays with a similar, the 4-2-5, because, yes, Lorenzo Styles has experience there, played some, especially in those dime packages, played more, but also played some nickel. There's a lot of good corners that want to get on the field, right? A lot of good guys. And to that point, there will be a lot for Matt Patricia to work with. It's going to take me a minute to get used to this, I guess is what I'll say. And I think you brought up some good points. Hopefully you've calmed some Buckeye fans who have go ahead.
Oh, I wanted you to finish. I just wanted to say this. I literally, because it was late, I'm sure I could have found one because my wife's a teacher. There's got to be one somewhere. I was trying to find a pencil so I could put in I was going to wear a hat and put a pencil in my, that's his thing, man.
Yeah,
when he comes into games, he'll be all dressed up and stuff, have his like AirPods in, and he'll still have one of those little like hipster hats on. He'll still have a pencil up in there. So that's like his thing. So I think for the first press conference, we should all have like pencils in it. Would that be kissing his ass a little too much? Then we'll ask him some tough questions. No.
It's got to be like the mini golf pencils. They're like the small ones that you.
Is that what he uses? Is it the mini ones?
I think so. I just looked at a lot of pictures of Matt Patricia as I was getting that story ready to go out.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope Ohio State fans that are concerned, maybe you've given them some positivity. I just, not to be negative on this, I just don't know enough about him as a defensive coordinator outside of Belichick. And I think you're counting on that, like you said, sort of rubbing off, but also these other two coaches that also got promotions today. And I think they deserve some conversation too. Tim Walton, Matt Guerrieri, both stepping up. I have to imagine that both of these guys, as you were sort of alluding to earlier, especially with Tim Walton, but all three really are going to work pretty closely together. And to me, it almost seems like Ryan Day's looking at his staff. He's promoted on the offensive side, Brian Hartline, Billy Fessler, both younger guys in this profession.
Keenan Bailey,
yeah, that too. And so he may look at that and say, I'm going to have to be more involved on that side of the ball while still doing CEO stuff. And maybe instead of just promoting Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri, something we kind of heard about early on in this process as being a possibility, is I need another head coach of the defense, and he can come in, he can run the defense. But to me, those two guys are the guys that know the defense and have worked in it. So it seems to me like these two are equally as important when you look at the 2025 Buckeye defense, especially given their familiarity with the personnel that's going to step into bigger roles.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised. I don't think you would have been either if we found out those guys had been promoted to co-defensive coordinator and they were going to run the show together.
No, at one point I thought at one point it sounded like that's what the Buckeyes were going to do from what we were hearing. And, I think there would have been some pushback there of young Tim Walton's not a young guy, but newer.
He's not an old guy though.
No, But I think there might have been a little bit of pushback there, especially with what they did on the offensive side of the ball. But
right.
yes, I definitely wouldn't have been surprised at one point. Sorry, go ahead.
I guess they do call him OG Walt. They don't call him YG Walt. That's original. That's not old. The O stands for original. Still probably kind of has the connotation of not young, but whatever. Moving right along. I'm with you, man. Like you get kind of, in my opinion, the best of both worlds here. Unless you think Patricia sucks, then you disagree with me. But if you think Patricia's good, you get a guy from the outside to come in, fresh ideas, hell of a good resume as far as experience, DC in the NFL, Super Bowls, multiple, head coach in the NFL, and he comes in. But you still keep the guys, Guerrieri and Walton, who ran the secondary this past year. I mean, Knowles obviously ran the defense, and I'll always have a soft spot for Jim Knowles. I understand a lot of people are pissed at him. Okay, that's fine. He came here. He was here for 3 years, had the number one defense in the country, and won the national championship. I'll always be good with Jim Knowles, especially when Ohio State beats Penn State here in Columbus on November 1st. But I digress. Yeah, so I think it's the best of both worlds, Patrick. I really do, because you're keeping Guerrieri and Walton, and Ryan Day is smart. I would bet my life he made sure both of those guys were okay with this, and he has a succession plan. He's probably even told Guerrieri, you're my guy. Just give me another year, maybe 2 at the most, and Guerrieri will be calling the defense himself. So I really like it, man. I really like it. I think, and again, I'm curious to get your take on this. So I know you're skeptical of Patricia, but where are you with just trust Ryan Day, or are you just not there yet?
No, I think that is the one thing, not the one thing, but that is the thing that throughout this whole process, I kept telling myself, telling other people, is look, other than you brought him up earlier, the Kerry Combs hire, or the Kerry Combs, I guess, hire back, and Parker Fleming. And that was pretty young Ryan Day, right? That was what, year 2, 3 of Ryan Day as a head coach. Now we're going into year 7. I don't think he's really missed since then, and the coaching staff, right? I mean, obviously the coaches he brought in last year with the national championship and whatnot. But yeah, I think you have to give Ryan Day the benefit of the doubt here. I think you can still have discussions, and that's what we do, right? But yeah, I'm not, until proven that Ryan Day can't do it, I'm not going to question the guy that just won the national championship. And yeah, I've heard some people say well, Chip Kelly's, the guy he calls for everything, that was easy and whatnot. Well, he also brought in Jim Knowles, which got him familiar with Matt Guerrieri, and then he brought Matt Guerrieri back. He hired Tim Walton. He brought in James Laurinaitis first as a graduate assistant, whatever he was that first year, just to take a look at it. So yeah, I certainly think Ryan Day deserves the benefit of the doubt with these coaching hires. Dave, I just saw something from your boy J-Book that I thought was pretty funny here.
It's your boy. Our boy.
Sure. You mentioned the Lions earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He said Ryan Day brings in the one guy Michigan fans hate more than Jack Sawyer. Maybe a little.
I mean, do they really hate Jack Sawyer?
Well,
I think Texas fans hate him more.
Well, that might be true, but I did think that was funny because obviously the how things went with the Lions. Matt Patricia, probably not the most popular guy in the state up north, and he will get to go back up there at the end of the season, end of the regular season. I want to get a little bit more into Walton and Guerrieri. Obviously, both are secondary guys. So you've got Patricia kind of overseeing the whole defense, I imagine, will be kind of how it's explained to us. I would assume even though Walton has co-defensive coordinator, he's still going to be very involved in the secondary, and things kind of work as they did a year ago. Is that what your read would be on how kind of the breakdown of responsibilities will be next season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Walt was heavily involved in game planning. Knowles leaned on him and, took his advice and everything. I don't think any of that's going to change, but I also don't think he's all of a sudden going to be calling half the plays or anything. I think mostly when you see titles like this, it's like a sign of gratitude. And hopefully it comes with a nice raise too, because it reminds me of I'm going to show my age here. It reminds me of an old episode of Cheers, as opposed to a new episode of Cheers, where like they couldn't where Sam Malone was talking about how he couldn't give raises to anybody, or maybe it was the parent company. So they were just giving out fancy titles to everybody. You're the assistant director of bartending and stuff like that, but you couldn't give any like raises out. This is going to come with a raise as well. I imagine that's what this is. We see this all the time in football. It started at Ohio State like 15 years ago. It was like a joke for a while. Now it's just commonplace. Everybody does it. And so I imagine co-defensive coordinator for Tim Walton doesn't change anything that he's going to do. It's just a sign of gratitude, a sign of respect, and it's going to come, unlike Cheers, it's going to come with a raise, is my guess.
I do wonder if he does have, I guess we don't know like exactly how it all was working last season, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised if there's some more responsibility. If you allow him to do some more stuff, maybe with the front. Obviously, you want him still working with the secondary, but if there is an idea of a succession plan here of both Guerrieri and Walton being co-defensive coordinators in a year or two, or if maybe the idea is even, hey, come in here, Matt Patricia, stay for a season or two. You can head back to the NFL. We're assuming Guerrieri because we heard a lot of good things. Ryan Day said some good things, but maybe Tim Walton is the next guy up, just given experience and whatnot. But all of his work has been in the secondary. Maybe this will give him an opportunity to work more with the rest of the defense. But I do think you need him to help, especially losing some guys that you did in the secondary to help in that capacity as well. And then the last thing, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but Larry Johnson, I think that's maybe the last domino here. And as I mentioned, there was a meeting apparently between him and Ryan Day early this offseason to kind of talk about where he is. We know the rumors of Larry retiring for years. I talked to him. I don't know if you talked to him when at Media Day at the National Championship. I talked to him real quickly about some of the young defensive linemen. It doesn't come across when you speak to him as a guy who's ready to hang it up, but he obviously has gotten up there. What do you think the future is for coaching defensive line at Ohio State? You think Larry stays on for another year? Do you think Larry was waiting to see what the situation would be at defensive coordinator? What's your read on that?
You didn't watch the Bucknuts Morning Five this morning, did you? You had better things to do. So my thing is now, I had a source tell me, I know other people reported this too that we trust, because I'm sure this was the plan. I had a source that I trust profusely tell me late in the 2023 season, so not even this past year, late 2023, this is LJ's last year. Thank God I didn't do like a front page story on it or anything. Like I hinted about it, like especially like on our podcast, like, hey, I'm hearing this is probably Larry's last year. So I wasn't even saying exactly what I was being told. I was told this is his last year. So I even couched it, thank God. And I didn't do a story. This is Larry Johnson's last year. So my joke is, Patrick, I'm just predicting Larry Johnson's going to coach till he's 100. So you asked if he's going to coach another year? No, he's going to coach another 20 some years. I don't know, 28 years. He's younger than people think. What is he, 72, 71?
According to Billy Tuesday, he is 72. I have asked about Larry Johnson.
28 more years. Thank you.
I have asked, because if you Google Larry Johnson, you find different answers about how old he is. I have never asked Larry Johnson directly.
Really?
Yeah.
There's birth certificate issues here.
I don't know what it is, because I did this a couple of years ago when there was a lot of talk about Larry, probably around the same time you were hearing that. But yeah, I've asked Jerry Emig, the SID, hey, can you confirm? And it's all within a couple of years, right? It's like 71, 72, 73. At the time, it was like 69, 70, 71. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how comfortable I feel about doing that. Or I don't remember exactly what Jerry's response was. And I get it. Like, it's a weird topic to just go ask a guy. That's why I've never asked Larry straight up. Yeah, I don't know. I think that would be an interesting thing if he does stay on. How does that work with Matt Patricia? And if he doesn't, where do now the Buckeyes are still looking for one more coach this offseason. Before we get out of here, Dave, I just want to get, assuming this is the complete staff, assuming Larry stays and this is what the staff looks like including the offensive side. How comfortable do you feel with the decisions Ryan Day's made? I know you said you're going to trust his decisions, but as you look at this staff heading into 2025, knowing you got to replace a lot of guys, what do you think of this group as a whole?
It's interesting with the youth movement on the offensive staff. And I was just looking this up, unless nothing's finalized, but Tim Drevno, to my understanding, is still going to be an advisor unless something changes. Is that your understanding?
I have not heard anything about him leaving, so that would be my understanding too. I mean, nowadays we get reports about even the senior advisor to the assistant coach or whatever when they leave. So I feel like we would have heard if Tim Drevno was leaving.
Yeah, and he still could. I mean, I know his boy Chip Kelly is now at the Raiders. If the Raiders need somebody, maybe he would go there. But hopefully Drevno's happy, because would I want Drevno here as the full-time offensive line coach? Probably not. Definitely not as offensive coordinator, which he was at Michigan at one point. But have a guy with his experience as an advisor is huge. And so that's the thing that jumps out at me when you ask about the offensive staff. It was wow, that's quite the youth movement. And is Ryan Day really going to turn it over to them and still be a CEO, or is he going to be too tempted to go back and call the plays if things start going awry after everything went so well with him as CEO? So having a guy like Drevno around would be nice. And if for some reason he does leave, getting a guy like Kevin Wilson, having a veteran there as a quality control advisor is huge in my opinion. So having Drevno there is big. Defensively, yeah, like I said, I'm on board with all of this. I know it's interesting. It really is. You and I are the perfect example. Everybody's split in Buckeye Nation over the Matt Patricia hiring, but I like it. I go back to something I said earlier. I truly believe that, in addition to just trusting Ryan Day, I truly believe this is the best of both worlds for Ohio State, because instead of just promoting from within and bringing somebody in from the outside who doesn't have that great of a resume, maybe it might be an up and comer or whatever, but it's coming in as as an assistant coach. You bring in Matt Patricia as the defensive coordinator. You still promote Walton and you still promote Guerrieri, and keep that continuity with 80% of the defensive coaches. You're keeping that continuity. That's not even including the quality control guys. I think Ryan Day did a really good job. But the good thing about sports is, man, we can talk about all we think it was good, we think it was bad. The great thing about sports is we will find out for sure, 100%.
Yeah, we absolutely will. It's going to take some time, but we'll get a glimpse in spring practice, which starts in just over a month. I do think you mentioned youth movement on the offensive side, and I know some people are probably a little disappointed that it hasn't been big name hire after big name hire coming out of a national championship. I don't think you need that. I mean, it's, if it works with Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles and guys like that, great. I've said this a couple times, the big thing last year at this time was retaining your players, right? And that was what NIL was focused at a lot. I think keeping a guy like Brian Hartline, keeping a guy like Keenan Bailey, who Keenan Bailey probably doesn't get enough credit, and Ryan Day even said this a little bit at the national championship celebration. Those are important. And, is Brian Hartline ready to be the full-time offensive coordinator and call plays? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows because he hasn't done it yet. You got to give him a chance sometimes. I've said in the past, I don't think Ohio State should be the first time you do things at because of what this program is, but it's turned out all right with Ryan Day, right?
Yes.
He just won a national championship. So
I joke about that when I'm and they're like, what do you think about Ryan Day promoting from within? I'm obviously this is his own bias because he was promoted from within, and people are I just say it totally serious. People are then I laugh. They know I'm joking. Am I joking now?
Yeah. And look, I think that's a good point too, is Ryan Day got this opportunity because Urban Meyer trusted him. He saw something in him and trusted him, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, there have been examples where it hasn't worked, but there are also examples where it has worked, and Ryan Day is probably the best of those. We can't sit here and crystal ball, to use a 24/7 sports phrase, what this will look like in 8-9 months, but I think overall, I feel pretty good about where the staff is headed. I think it'll be interesting hearing from Brian Hartline more when we interview him. Almost all of the time, we get a lot of good answers, unless he's arguing with Tim May, who by the way.
Little tit for tat there.
Yeah, when they go back and forth
A
sometimes.
couple of Columbus legends just going at it.
Right. So I think that'll be interesting. Hearing from Matt Patricia, just a guy who's been in, for at the very least, he's been in 3 locker rooms that won Super Bowls, right?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Hearing from a guy like that, I think will be pretty exciting. And, we go from there. Hopefully we get to talk to some of these guys soon.
Yeah, I know you're on the case, which we appreciate.
Yeah.
I was gonna stalk Jerry, but you guys are doing we're on a group text. Well, I'll let you guys behind the curtain. I'm not gonna say who's on it. We have a little group text with some of the guys on the beat, and I was gonna text Jerry and be like, Jerry, when we get? And then I noticed the guys that I'm on this group text are stalking Jerry every day, asking them when we're gonna get interviews. But you guys are doing God's work. I approve of it. Hey, what does the squeaky wheel get?
The grease. Sometimes.
Keep going.
When I asked Jerry about it, he said he thought maybe we'd get something once the staff was all put together. And I guess it's important to point this out. I meant to say this at the beginning. Nothing has been officially announced yet. Even the offensive staff hasn't been officially announced by Ohio State yet. It's only a matter of time, but I think it's important to point that out.
I have it on good authority. All of these hirings will be official.
Yes. So I assume once they are officially announced, we will get something with the new coaches. Hopefully the freshmen, hopefully the transfers. I don't want to let
probably when I'm out of town. Well, I've been still looking forward to my trip to Red Spring training, but hopefully it's not then. If it is, I have no doubt you and Steve will knock it out. But of course it'll probably be then. Hopefully it's sometime next week.
That'd be great.
Maybe I will stalk Jerry and be like, please do this next week.
If I see Jerry at tonight's men's basketball game, I will again follow up with him about all this. So, all right, I think we've touched on everything there with the staff.
This is Pat's show. I shouldn't do that. So
I don't even know what that means.
I say on Bucknuts Morning 5 that you love joy mode.
Yeah,
it's leading to because I read all these stories about not enough people are getting married. You're getting married. Low fertility rate in the United States. Joy mode can help out with that too. Just saying. Let's get let's get more babies going. More marriages and more babies.
Based on my friend group and age demographic, I think there's plenty of children being born into the world right now. So I don't think we need to deal with that. But anyway, Dave, thanks for jumping on with me. I was, as I said off the top, I was planning on doing something tomorrow where I was going to talk about assistant coaches, but this seemed to be a more appropriate time given the news. So appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. And I know you don't have a drink there, Dave, which I'm a little disappointed at, to be entirely honest.
I have water. I'll get one in a little bit for the basketball game. Cheers.
Cheers.
Other way, cheers.